Okay, so mic is hooked up, just checking the sound, and yeah, good to go. Okay, so sometimes when I start that, it doesn't go, and I end up talking to myself for a minute without checking before I realize that it's not recording anything. So today we're going to go through a guide to conditioning parameters, both through aerobic and anaerobic measures. So before I did an introduction video to energy systems, and if the word energy systems throws you off, that would be a good one to go to, because it just kind of goes through the foundations of everything before we jump into the practical application here. If that doesn't interest you and you want to just see the practical applications, then this video will do perfectly as well. So we're going to go through a guide now, and we're going to break it down basically step by step. I've kind of crunched it in to make it as simple as possible and as digestible as possible, and try to minimize, I suppose, a lot of the wording in it, and try to just break it into something that's very simple and easy to get through. So at least maybe this will give you something to either understand why you're a coach or why you're getting certain conditioning methods like this, or it might let you look at your sessions and your condition and say, okay, well, you know, am I doing the same of a lot, or am I doing just anaerobic training, or do I tend to do a bit more aerobic work, or am I actually doing anaerobic work even though I thought I was? Maybe I actually amn't, because I realised the rest times aren't in line with what true anaerobic work is. But we'll get through all that. So, energy systems. I've made a video on this before called an Introduction to Energy Systems, where I touched on the foundations, and I will link that below in the description. It would be like a part 1 to this. Today we will go through a quick recap of the most important parts that apply to this part of the lesson, I suppose, and then we'll look at the application of them in a gym setting. So, breaking it into 3 different sections. We've got our phosphagen ATP system, our glycolytic system, and our oxidative system. So, 1, phosphagen ATP system. Again, we're going to break these into little subsections within them, but for the most part, this is just our primary anaerobic system. Well, for the most part, it is our primary anaerobic system. That means the energy we use without oxygen. So extremely high power, low sustainability. Think your 1 rep max. You know, if you do that once, obviously it's your 1 rep max for a reason. You're not going to get it for a 2nd or 3rd rep. And if you do, it's not really your 1 rep max. So think high power, your max 40-yard dash. So after your 40 yards, your pace might drop off a little bit because you've put all of your power into the first 40 yards. It's not sustainable. Next, glycolytic system. Second, anaerobic system, 20 seconds to 2 minutes. Again, this is what's in the books. I don't know what I fully refer to it as your second anaerobic system. And I went through this in the last video, I believe, and if I didn't, I'll touch on it here. It's a huge myth that you can train these individually, or you can pick and choose individually what you're training here. All of these energy systems, everything works together and they're all working at once. It's just maybe you might lean into one a little bit more than the other. So for the sake of this, the glycolytic system, it's our second anaerobic system, 20 seconds to 2 minutes. And this is moderate power, moderate sustainability. So think your 200-meter run, that you're able to repeat it at a moderate pace, but a strong pace, but you're able to sustain that pace given appropriate rest times as such. So that could be anywhere from actually 100 meters to 400 meters, to be honest. Then look at your oxidative system. This is your primary fuel source at rest and during low intensity activities. So this is your energy system with oxygen, and it's kind of defined in terms of time as anything 2 minutes of above. To be honest, your aerobic system probably comes into play a lot quicker than that, but this is your low power, long sustainability. So think 5k, 10k, half marathon, marathon at an extreme. So again, your power output isn't going to be huge. You must lessen that in order to increase the sustainability, because the time is going to take longer. So obviously, as the time of the event gets longer, your power is going to come down, hence sustainability up, power down. So starting off where on the first one, we're going to break most of them into 2 sections. So ATP power and capacity. So we're going to go to power first. So again, a typical example of this event, as I said, is a 1 rep max or a 40-yard dash, and then just kind of going through the ATP power. You can never get sick of saying that. These are our our explosive bursts, and it's our ability to be quick. So this, or training this style, kind of improves the rate of your ATP PC regeneration and increases the amount of enzymes involved in energy production. So it is important to train this system. It's important to train all aspects of the system, especially early in a phase where you're trying to get generally fit. It's usually good to not ignore a certain aspect. So doing this, you know, once every 10 days at the end of a session might be no harm, or even as a session on its own. But that's besides the point. Let's just go through the guidelines. So the guidelines here is anything from 7 to 10 seconds. Usually we'd have used a 6 to 12 second model, 7 to 10, whatever you want to. It's all the same. 8 seconds is the one I like to work with on this. You would take 2 to 4 minutes rest. So obviously if you're working 6 to 7 seconds, you know, you'd look around the 2-minute rest. If you're working 10 to 12 seconds, you'd look at the 4-minute rest. 6 sets to 12 sets, and the rest is the crucial part here. So quality over quantity. You want your rest times to feed into your working sets, because if your rest time is too short, you're not able to repeat the given power output, which means you're not going to get the adaptation you want. So an example here is 5 rounds of 8 seconds max effort on the assault bike sprint, 3-minute rest. It's as basic as that. And for the simplicity of giving these, I just do a lot of them as like assault bike sprint or rowing intervals or things like that. I keep it very simple in terms of the application within the gym. Obviously, there's other ways you can do this, training a 1-rep max or training some dynamic effort, speed, squats and things like that might be able to get you some aspects of some of these trainings. Or even as we look at the aerobic work, you know, there's loads of different ways to train that system. But for the sake of this, I'm just going to keep it very simple, and we're just going to touch on ways that it works within the time domains and just apply something simple like a monostructural bike, run, row or whatever. So going on to the next one, ATP PC capacity. So this is your capacity in simple terms would be your ability to reproduce. So this says that it improves your ability to maintain explosive power for extended durations and improve max capacity of ATP PC system by increasing the amount of stores of phosphocreatine. So what this would look like is, let's say after 2 sprints of your ATP PC power program, and you tend to just have a big drop off. By increasing your capacity and training that side, that drop off might stagnate, or it might not happen till your 4th sprint. There'll always be a drop off. Of course, that's just the nature of it, but you want to get a bigger capacity to delay that drop off or improve it. The guidelines to this would be 10 to 15 seconds per rep, 20 to 90 seconds rest, 6 to 12 sets. So an example, you're on the assault bike, 5 sets of 15 seconds max effort and rest 2 minutes 45 seconds. So basically 5 sets of 15-second max effort every 3 minutes for 15 minutes. It's as simple as that. That's how you train that one. Then glycolytic system in a nutshell. So typical example would be an event lasting 20 seconds to 2 minutes. So I like to say 100 to 400 meter run for a lot of people. Primary fuel source, again, we went through this, comes from the breakdown of blood glucose and glycogen. And this is stuff we touched on in introduction to energy systems. So that's something you can go back and look at there. So glycolytic power training. So the guidelines here is we're still looking for max intensity on each rep. Now, each set is 20 to 40 seconds. That's 1 to 3 minute rest. So 20-second set would mean, you know, maybe 1 to 2 minute rest. 40-second set could mean 2 to 3 or even 3 to 4 minute rest. So again, you're looking at higher end to lower end. An example of this would be assault bike, 5 rounds, 30 seconds work, 90 seconds rest. Simple as that. Now, on this, something I want to go through is, the max intensity on each rep. So this is important because you're not going to be able to get up to the level of power output that you would in your anaerobic, your pure anaerobic work, your ATP PC work. But you should be able to push as hard as you can for the 20 to 40 seconds. So that's what that means. It doesn't mean you're not failing by not getting as high power output. You're getting this from going as hard as you can given the time domain. So that's important there. Some people kind of think that one isn't working for them because they're not able to get up to their max effort. You're not going for your max effort. You're going for your max effort within that time cap, which is a little bit different. Then looking at the same, but instead of power, we're looking at capacity again. So your ability to sustain anaerobic energy production for extended periods of time. The goal over time is to increase glucose storage and utilization potential. So this is the capacity we're looking at again, your ability to do more of the power stuff. So this would help aid that. The guidelines here is each set is 40 to 120 seconds, 1 to 2 minutes of incomplete rest. So incomplete rest means basically you're not going to get anywhere kind of near your full recovery. That's gone out the window from here on in. You're not training that for right now. So incomplete rest is important to train here at times. And one I like to do with this, and I've done with a lot of my GA players, runners before, it's an AMRAP, so as many reps as possible for 20 minutes. You run 400 meters, you take a 1-to-1 work to rest ratio. So if I run a 400 meters and it takes me 1 minute and 15 seconds, I take 1 minute and 15 seconds rest. So I look at my watch and I say, right, I'm going to go on 3:30, and I repeat. And I do that for 20 minutes, see how many rounds I get. As well, you can scale this to 200 meters, 300 meters. A nice way of improving it is, you know, do 400 meters the first week, 300 the second, 200 the third, and then go back to 400 and see where you're at. Oxidative system in a nutshell. So this is our aerobic system. This sustains activity longer than 2 minutes in duration and can be maintained for long periods. So a few methods we'd look at. The first one is cardiac output. This improves the heart's ability to deliver oxygen. So the guidelines here is any low intensity exercise, heart rate within 130 to 150 beats per minute. A lot of you would have seen me use my Whoop or my MyZone strap and, you know, track my heart rate as I'm doing my workout. And this would be a minimum of 30 minutes. Ideally a minimum of 40. I always go with a minimum of 30 because 40 is a lot for people who are busy, and people really don't see the value in sessions like this, even though there is a lot of value to be gotten for them. Now, there's an important part here. So your heart rate is important here. So if your coach gives you a certain heart rate, you need to try and aim for that, because there's a big difference. If I say, you know, if you've had a game or you've had a hard training session on a Sunday and, you know, we need to catch up, or we need to like work on our aerobic system, and maybe come Monday I give you, okay, we're going to go for 40 minutes on a bike. I want your heart rate around, you know, 120 to 130 or 130 max, and next thing at the end of it it's closer to 150, 155. They're two very different adaptations. So cardiac output, it does improve your heart's ability to deliver oxygen, but there is a little bit of interference effect there. So if it's an active recovery or something that you don't want to interfere, I would be looking, you know, 120 to 130 beats per minute. If it's something like this where we're trying to improve our aerobic capacity a little bit and we're trying to get a little bit fitter, get those kind of inches over time, then 130 really. 150, to be honest, is fine if there's nothing either day of it. And that's assuming maybe that it needs work. So if you're someone who is relatively fit, that 150, 140 won't be as taxing on you. But do understand that there is a difference between 130 to 150. And oftentimes the guideline of 130 to 150 is just a nice one because, you know, I suppose it allows for a little bit of error on the side of the watch. But I would always shoot for 130 with stuff like this. Especially if it's mid-season, I would rarely, for those longer sessions, 40, 45, 50 minutes, I would be trying to stick to 130 beats per minute. But anyway, to move on. The example here is just 10 minutes of each one, bike, row, ski. Or you could do 5 minutes of each one for 2 rounds, bike, row, ski. Again, goal is simple. Understand that you're trying to keep it around 130 to 150 beats per minute. A side note on that, rowing and running is the hardest thing to keep the heart rate down. You have to go a little bit ridiculously slow, whereas the bike and ski is a little bit easier. So just note that for yourself. Then moving on, we've got high intensity intervals. So this provides a high level of stimulus through a combination of high intensity and high volume work. It increases your endurance of fast twitch fibers. So the guidelines here is best done unweighted or low resistance movements, and you want to be working for 10 to 20 minutes, and people tend to get on best with this with 4 to 5 sets. So here's a quick one you can do that's about 16 minutes long. So 4 sets of 1 minute box step ups, 1 minute kettlebell swings, keeping it light, you know, 12 kg you'll do, 1 minute of walking lunges, body weight, and 1 minute of rowing, moderate pace. So on that moderate pace, you'd be looking for no more than 150 beats per minute if you were to track your heart rate. If you were to track your pace, you know, take an idea of what a strong 500 meter row is for you. And if it's usually a 2 minute per 500 meter row, bring it down to 220 or 215 or even more than a 220 if needs be, but just at a consistent pace. Once those 4 sets are up, you know, you'll have 16 minutes of solid work put in there, and there's that bit of muscular endurance in it as well, which is nice. High resistance aerobic methods then, this is for improving the aerobic abilities of fast twitch fibers, which means high power output can be maintained longer. It increases your oxidative abilities of high threshold motor, that's his motto, meant to say motor units, by constantly supplying them with oxygen. So it's a lot of jargon there, but I suppose it's the way it's defined in the textbooks. I just kind of want to have them up there, and we can expand on them then as we go on. So the guidelines here, this is lower skill is needed here, and it's ideally loading a little bit heavier. So on a sled or with carries is perfect, and each rep is max intensity. So again, that max intensity is within context. So 10 to 12 seconds per set, 10 to 15 sets. So an example here is 10 rounds of a 60-yard sled pull or heavy farmer walks, rest 60 seconds. And by the end of the 10 rounds, you'll have 600 meters pulled or 600 meters carried, and it'll be fairly heavy. Ideally going fairly heavy on those. And again, this is just a high resistance aerobic method, so you'll be digging into your aerobic base here, but bit of resistance behind it. You know, it'll allow for a sort of a different kind of stimulus. Again, this is very general work, and these are general examples. There's lots of ways to do these. So this is as simplified as it gets. Hopefully it gives you some reason behind why you do some workouts, runs, or it gives you some structure in your own planning for training. And I'll make sure to link that other video below. If anyone has any questions, you can catch me on Instagram at KMPLX Fitness or email kjfarrellfitness@gmail.com.